With a round of applause, welcome Mr. KUMAR Rangarajan, CEO, Slang Lab.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay, thanks. Can we get started? Yeah. Okay, cool. Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending this class. My name is KUMAR Rangarajan. I'm one of the co-founders of Slang Labs. So we'll jump right into this, right? So this Nandan is not me, not Rangarajan. This actually is Nandan Nilakani. We are going to be sending money to him. I'll explain why. So what are voice payments? Right? The term is vague because it's still being formed. So let's just start with what is voice payments. Oops. It's fundamentally using voice to simplify the process of doing voice payment transactions. Right? So that's what, at a very, very low level, it means. Right? How do you use voice to simplify? Now, the moment we say voice, there are different attributes of it. We'll again come back to that in a subsequent set of slides. But that's the higher level theme. Right? How do you use voice to simplify that journey? Now, before we continue too much into this, a little marketing break, like introduction about us, who we are. So again, we are a Bangalore-based startup, started in 2017 by ex-Facebook and Microsoft research folks. We came together and started it. And we are backed by Google. Google is one of our investors, and we are one of the first and their only investment in a voice assistant company themselves. They themselves have their own voice assistant, but they still invest in us because we have a very complementary sort of tech. And we are fundamentally a full-stack, no-code, low-code voice assistant platform, which can be embedded inside apps to be able to now perform transactions inside them. And these are some of... Oh, sorry. Ooh. Really sorry. Do not disturb is on, still didn't work. And these are some of the customers with whom we are actively working, right, across various domains that we support. Before jump into voice payments, let's just do a little background on voice ecosystem itself, right? How has the evolution and how has that journey and everything else has been, right? So voice, when people talk about voice, there are multiple sectors that it actually covers, right? The number one thing that most of us typically get used to is in the call center, right? When you call a call center, how do you use voice tech to be able to now improve the efficiency of calls? You don't need so many humans backing it. Can you automate the responses that somebody's able to now call, hey, I have checked my balance, I have lost my credit card. You don't want to talk to an agent. Some of them can be just automated by tech itself. And that's an area that a bunch of companies are playing in that domain. Right? So that's one very common usage of voice itself. When you talk about voice, it's like human voice. Another area where voice tech is being adopted is in the area of enterprise. Right? In enterprises, where when you're doing, like you want to be able to now transcribe a meeting, you're having a meeting, you want someone to be able to now take notes. You don't want a human involved to be able to now take notes. How do you use a voice tech to be able to now reduce and improve efficiency of things that happens inside a corporate environment? Right? It can be for to be able to now do repeat transactions, but all in a corporate sort of a setup. And again, there are a bunch of companies which operate in that setup, providing enterprise class capabilities by using voice assistants. Then this is a much more common thing, voice in entertainment. Right? This is what most of us have first time experienced voice, like using Alexa or a Google Home device. Mostly for entertainment, very simple productivity task. Right? Play a song, turn on camera, turn on light. So all those kind of tasks, which is a very, very which actually popularized the notion of voice, significantly made it popular among the masses. This is another one. What we operate, this is another one which is actually growing on, is in the area of commerce, right? Where you're actually doing transactions. You're actually doing commercial transactions using a smartphone or something else. How does voice now help smoothen that journey? How can it help journey? That is another area of voice. This is an upcoming area, and this is an area that we, Slang Labs, specializes in. Right? So that's what we're focusing on. So again, when people think of voice, it's across this entire gamut. That's it. And then from a technology itself, from a voice as a technology itself, it has actually been evolving quite a bit. Again, this is a tech masterclass, so I'm not going to go down to too much of boring tech, but at least some level of background on the tech itself, how the tech itself has evolved over many years of how things have happened. Right? Now, voice can be broken down into devices, because fundamentally voice is an input and output medium. How has it evolved over time, and how has the technology evolved over time? Let's just quickly cover that part. Right? The history of devices, again, this might be very, very common. Most people know this, but I'm just going to quickly repeat it so that we can move on. Started with punch cards. Right? That's how we typically used to interact with a computer system. You would have a whole a sheet, you punch holes into it at a certain format, feed it into a machine, and the machine will now understand what exactly you're trying to tell it. You can't, there's no keyboard. This is how you used to interact with it very, very, very many years ago. Right? Then it evolved into teleprompters and keyboards, like where you can now have a keyboard where you can start to interact with it in a slightly more realistic way. Right? You type, if you want to say something, you type in English. You don't type in a cryptic code. So it started evolving into that sort of fashion. Then it into slightly more natural thing, like I want to go somewhere, I don't want to go like here and go there. Directly go there, right? I just want to be able to click something, a mouse, I'll be able to now move anywhere and everywhere on the screen, made the inputs even more natural, slightly closer to real world scenario. Then evolved touchscreen systems, where now it even reduced the need for having external device. Now it's your hand directly touching on a screen to be able to interact with it. So it kept cutting down the gap between the human and the thing. Then voice assistants came. Right? Voice assistants came and said, hey, now you can actually now talk. You don't have to now touch, you don't have to now use a mouse to be able to now do. Can you just talk to get things done in your computing devices? Whatever computing device you want, can now be able to now use voice to be able to now do this. That's the next evolution that is coming. Next is like, okay, but what voice assistants initially started with Siri, as an example, it's like just very simple task again. You could not do a lot of transactions with that sort of tech. So then it went into chatbots, right? Like there was an era where messenger-based, everything would become an app. You don't need an app, but an app can be performed by a chatbot. Right? A chatbot can take over the entire journey. Everything can be conversational, and where people now type in, and it's a different kind of a form factor in which how you would interact with. Right? That essentially was what the world thought in around 2016, 15, 16. That's how the world will evolve into. But I know that did not really happen fully. This is where we think the world is right now, and this is where the world is heading to. It's a conglomeration of your apps. Your apps is where most of us end up doing most of the transactions. That's where all major activity happens. Now in that area is where now voice is again fitting in to be able to now make the journey and experience of that app even more smoother, even more easier, even more simpler. So that's again how the history and evolution of things have actually become. And from a tech perspective, voice has evolved in a certain way, like where it started out just to be in 50s, recognizing just words. This is a device which was released called Rex, where you could just say the word Rex, and a pig will come out, or a dog will come out, and so you can then go back, right? But it'll not, you don't have to touch anything. You just say Rex, it'll come out and go. It is very, very limiting. It will work only with male voices because it will only tweaked with that particular frequency. The moment a female speaks, frequency is very different. It will not even recognize it. But that's a very, very early tech, how the world used to operate. Then it went into IBM and isolated words. You can actually speak words. It's not just one word. You can say things like 1, 2, 3, 4. Systems, computers started to understand this. It might seem like an alien thing, man. Can't even understand it, but that's how it was. It didn't magically evolve like that, right? It took from here, from recognizing just one word to then being able to recognize a series of individual words. Then it went into being able to recognize a sentence. Okay, now I can actually recognize a sentence where it's not necessarily 1, 2, 3, 4. I can say, like, hey, come here. You can speak a natural sentence that can now start to recognize those natural sentences. From a tech, it evolved. There was again, I'm not going to go down to too much aspect, but just to a high level, like people started working on the statistical model where they would tweak various sound patterns of how people will speak. Then they would do a pattern. Okay, if I say bank, it's like ba, ink. So essentially they would learn to come up with characters for, there's a different set of alphabets called phonemes for the way the voice forms. And then the systems will be able to recognize the voice pattern and form actual words and start even form new words. It doesn't have to now be every word doesn't have to have been seen before. It can now start to form new words based on breaking down your voice into certain, but it's a very statistical model. It's a very rule-based system. You still have to write rules to be able to say, okay, these sound patterns mean this word, these sound patterns mean this word. And anybody could extend it because we're able to now come up with a basic set of alphabets. Now, what those alphabets translate into an English word or a Hindi word, everything was a separate. People could just keep writing rules and extend. Then, what has now evolved in today's world is this whole notion of deep learning systems, right? Where the system is able to now figure out, okay, given an audio pattern, what is the output? Right? Where you are not specifically training, go listen for the sounds, look for these patterns and everything. The system is now able to now figure it. And again, we're not going to go on technical too much, but from a deep learning system, it's all about like it's able to now figure out its own patterns. Okay, if I have thousands of audio samples and thousands of recorded labels, it is able to figure out, okay, if this audio means this word, this audio means this word, this pattern means this word. It's able to now on its own figure it out. That's how it's now able to now come to a much more broader, smarter various system. You don't have to now tweak every single person's accents, every single word doesn't have to be trained and taught. This is now able to now learn. And these are the building blocks which has now evolved the tech to reach to the state that it is in today. Right? And from where it is going from there, it is again to be able to now make things work with multiple languages. In Indian languages, still there is a challenge. It's not yet as rich as how it is to be able to now understand English and other languages. So that's where the journey of the tech is now evolving. How do you now handle more languages? How do you make this recognition work in a much more smaller form factor? Like even on a mobile phone, to be able to now recognize. These deep learning models take a lot of MB of data to be able to now recognize them. But how do you now shrink it to a smaller size that can sit in? And also, how do you now make this technology now more prominent for normal and everyday developers to be able to now consume? You don't need to be a specialist AI developer or a ML developer to be able to now consume this tech. Any average, I shouldn't use the word average, but any Android business developer should be able to now take this technology and consume it into their tech. So that's where this whole thing is now being evolved. Right? So that's all background of the whole tech space. Now, back to the core topic of voice payments. Right? So just to be able to now bring it back. When you talk about voice payments, there are two broad notions of voice again. Voice, where it is used as an input mechanism, where I'm able to speak something and the system is able to now understand and help me to perform activities in a much more natural way. And another one where voice is actually aiding you, where you listen to audio and you do something. Right? It's either ways. It's not, voice doesn't necessarily mean where you only speak or where you only, it's both of these things put together are the two things that system is now able to now develop. Now, using this, now what are the payment channels that, what are the channels that are actually practically out there, right? Today, using these two broad input and output based mechanisms. One of them is the notion that whenever a payment is done, right, voice now tells you, soundbox, as an example. Again, we'll come to that. That's an extremely interesting innovation that has now happened to be able to now make, where people are notified of what has happened. Then the traditional thing is like where using an IVR telephony, people do this. And the third one is to be able to now do with a smartphone access. Again, I'm going to cover that, so I'm just skipping it because I want to cover it a little bit more detail. So the Paytm soundbox, right? We have heard Vijay Shekhar Sharma talk about it in the morning. Most of us have experienced it in real world. It solved a very, very common but a very simple problem that most vendors had. Did the transaction actually go through? Right? How do they know in a crowded scenario? Like somebody saying, I paid the money. Earlier they used to touch and feel the money. Now they don't even touch and feel the money. It's like someone is saying some screenshot. How do I trust it? How do I trust the system actually worked? Right? While in general, most people have a very trusting experience, but there are still corner cases which you didn't want to catch, right? Which is what the sound output mechanism was able to now solve. By having a sound box, when a transaction is ended, the device could detect the fact that a transaction got ended. It will speak out, okay, so much of money got transferred to your account. So that's how the user do. And now it started with a sound box like a device. Now more and more apps are actually doing it in a much more simple way. Just in your app, like Google Pay, if you look at the Google Pay business app, there is actually a sound notification. So when the transaction happens, the app itself will speak out. You don't need a device. Right? People just keep it on the phone, and the device will know, and the phone itself will speak out and tell you what happened. Right? So that's one journey where it is one value where sound is already crept in. It has actually helped solve one problem. Another one, which is again where NPCA has innovated on to be able to talk about how do you now enable UPI transactions for people who have a feature phone. Right? They don't have a smartphone. They have a feature phone. How do you make them work? Now there, it's like, can I now use the regular telephony line? Can I call a number and then do my UPI transaction using that? Right? There was, I think a session was happened even yesterday where they covered it in detail, but I'm going to go down in detail, but that's another avenue where voice has actually been able to now help perform transactions by just calling a number. But there, today as it stands, it is still like where when you want to be able to now enter inputs, you have to enter by touching. Right? You have to enter 1, 0, 0 and stuff. Like when you want to be able to now speak a bank name, you can't enter something, where there you can speak. Right? There even voice input works, but most of the time it is about touching on the keypad and being able to now enter inputs. But that's simplified the journey for people who could not have smartphone access. It's actually made them, for who do not have access, I just had to be able to make a transfer to this phone number. How do I do it? So that gave them that ability to be able to now make it happen. Now the natural and next step evolution, which is where we are in the cusp of to be able to do, is like most of the future-looking activities are happening on a smartphone. Right? Are happening on a smartphone, happening on a payment app that is there. Here is where how does voice payments now happen on that kind of a scenario. Right? It is for you as a consumer. You are not a merchant who is now experiencing the output of a payment. You are not a feature phone user, but you are a smartphone user. That's where the future is. Everyone is trying to aspire to become a smartphone user, if not today, tomorrow. Right? And most of us in this crowd already are a smartphone user. For us, what does voice payments basically mean? How do we now leverage voice payments? So this is being able to now have a voice layer on top of your popular payment app and being able to perform transactions by just saying what is your intent. Send 200 rupees to mom. right? You should just be able to now say it. That's your intent. You just want to transfer someone money to someone. You just have to say it. You don't have to figure out, okay, where is that send button, where is that money being able to now enter. Just being able to now say it, and the system should be able to now get your job done. Right? How does it? So that's where the future is now trying to get to, right? And this does not bypass security for people to be able to know. I'm not going to say it's going to be automatically just go. It's not just. It's a convenience mechanism to be able to now skip a lot of the hoops that exist today, but still stops at where it has to stop. Right? Okay, please enter your PIN number by hand. Today it is still by hand. Eventually it will become other means of authentication will start to come in, but today it is limited by that particular piece of story has to still be entered by your touch-based mechanism. It will now be able to now get things done. Right? And authenticate, and the rest of the journey completes. But all the other previous steps got shut significantly. And again, the process of doing it has become so much more simpler. And it is not just for P2P payments. This extends to a lot of other things that you are today what we talk about payments. Right? I want to be able to now pay electricity bill. I should be able to say, pay my electricity bill, pay 2 rupees electricity bill to Bescom, recharge my Airtel prepaid number for 500 rupees. You should be able to now say all those things and get your job done. Right? You don't have to now figure out how to do that in your app and learn where in which screen it is all hidden, which button it is all things are hidden. You just have to be able to now speak, and the app should be able to now react and respond to you. So that's the journey that is being worked on. And icing on the cake, to be able to now do that in your own language. Right? Like this is, I'm not an Hindi speaker, so I'm going to speak in Tamil. Right? If you want to be able to now say something as simple like this, and that's what will enable our parents and everyone else to be able to use such systems. Right? They don't have to learn. They don't have to learn any in English dictionary. They just want to be able to say things in their most natural way. And even for us, we would rather prefer in our own mother tongue. You should be able to say it, and things should just happen. Right? So that's the thing that we're now trying to make it happen. This is the future that we're working with NPCI to be able to now make this whole thing possible. Like coming soon, it's not there yet, but that's the journey. Like we have done on the output box, sound box is innovated on the 123 talk. That is already there for a feature phone, for the smartphone users. And for the next level of convenience, how do you know what we have to do? That's what we're now trying to get to. So again, I'm not going to go down to, if you have time, we can talk about the tech that is running behind this, but I just want to end with a demo. Right? Like we all talked about it, but how does it actually look like? How does the experience actually going to look like? So I'm going to show you a quick 2-minute demo. So this is an app which it's Slang Pay. Obviously, it's not a real app, but it's the app which essentially demonstrates the concepts of how a voice pay enabled system will all work. Oops. Yeah.
What are you looking for?
So just
Send 200.
so just to set some context. So this is this button here. This is your app. Imagine your normal app. Doesn't fundamentally change. There's a overlay button with which you interact with the system. Then you click on it, everything just starts from there.
What are you looking for?
Send 200 rupees to Nandan.
Please select the contact and proceed.
Let's make Nandan rich.
Please confirm the details and proceed. Please type in your PIN. 200 rupees transferred to Nandan Nilekani. How can we help?
Pay my electricity bill.
Please select your service provider. Please confirm the details and proceed. Please type in your PIN. Electricity bill payment done. What else?
What's my balance?
Please check your balance here.
We don't speak out because it's not safe.
आप क्या खोज रहे हैं?
Right? It is switched to Hindi. Now, all the things you cannot do it in
नंदन
Hindi.
को 100 रुपए और भेजो.
इनसे जुड़े कई नाम मिले. किसी एक को चुनिए. कृपया सूचना को जांच लो और आगे बढ़े. नंदन को 100 रुपए भेज दिए गए। आपकी कैसे सहायता कर सकते हैं?
एयरटेल प्रीपेड बिल रिचार्ज।
Anyway,
यह सभी प्लान मौजूद हैं, इनमें से कोई चुनिए।
the journey ends there. I think the video ends at this point. Right? So this is the kind of simplicity that's being envisioned, right? To be able to now perform transactions like this, the most common and natural transactions, by just being able to now speak and speak it in your own mother tongue. Right? So that's the whole vision of how we're trying to go to here. And that's the end of my speech for now. Any questions? Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
How are you doing voice to text? Are you going to the internet, hitting?
Yes. So today it's internet, it's hitting our backend, and our backend does all that magic.
Own model or Google's API?
So we have a combination of our model, and we also use third-party models. It's both right now, right? And the goal is to be able to now cut that out completely. It'll be our model. It'll be an India built model. In the mobile? No, not it. So today it'll be on our backend, but not necessarily going out to Google, but in our backend, our model. We're working with Bashini as an example to be able to now make that models. India's so there's a bunch of project work that's happening from this government agency to be able to now build India's own ASR models, right? So to be able to now work, and then to be eventually to move to the mobile is still a couple of years away. At least a couple of years away. It's not ready yet because it has to be in a sub. The main challenge is to be able to shrink it to a size that is sub MB, right? You can technically make it up as from a demo perspective. We have a on-device model that can work, right? But that's still 50 MB plus size from a practical sense, right? 50 MB plus, but that won't work. Which app can carry the burden of a 50 MB ASR model, right?
So what do you mention about the India level?
It's called Bashini. Bashini, BHASINI. So Bashini is a project from the government of India to be able to now build a language tech that is India-based, like NLP engines in Indian languages, ASR to handle all the 22 languages of India, right? A top-grade ASR to be built, but from India. Right? So that will. So it's not one company doing on its own a commercial thing. It's actually going to be open sourced. It'll be make a lot more people applicable. Yeah, this is all built into that system, right? No, recognize. Okay, okay. You mean voice identification? So identification is not envisioned as part of this scope, right? So this is post authentication to be able to now simplify the journey that happens post that activity, right? It is correct. So that's we will now be able to now do that also subsequently. That will be definitely the ideal vision to be able to now. I don't even have to now authenticate, pre-authenticate. I just say and use my voice model to be able to now figure out who I am as at least one of the factors of authentication. Because RBI still wants a two-factor authentication. Right? This can be one of the factor of authentication. Where it can. Correct. Correct. Right. It could be your voice. Right? So that's still future. But this is today the initial focus is on getting that convenience layer done. Right? To be able to now trigger and be able to do a lot of things which typically take a lot of time to be able to shrink and then make that faster.
Would you be able to make offline payments as well? Is offline also scoped in without connectivity dependency?
Yeah, good question. So today this is not because this is still again for the offline is what 123 talk is envisioning, where it doesn't need internet. It is basically using a feature line. This one still is sitting on top of an app which internally still requires internet. Right? All the payment apps today without internet they can't operate. So the voice does also has the same requirement.
So my question was specifically for the reason because, example over here, quite a few of us are facing network issues.
Sure.
Okay, so in this scenario, if I have to make a payment, would have allowed me to make a payment just by the help of my voice in absence of a network?
Correct. So, good question, but this is not envisioned to solve that. 123 talk is the current scenario for being able to solve that, where you dial a number and then you specify again you type in. Where it doesn't require any internet, it just works on the normal voice lines.
So for a bank, you just require an API integration with their payment system.
Yes. Yeah, it's a front-end integration, not even a back-end integration. It just requires you to be able to integrate your apps front-end. It's a simple SDK. You plop in, and then that takes care of handling all of this.
If I have to make a payment for any shopping mall or something, how it will be done?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
I'll bank the shopping. the payment in the shopping mall.
Oh, you're saying
I-
noise.
Yeah, I have purchased, no, not noise basically. I have purchased apparel and now I want to make the payment. So how it will be done through this?
So we have good question. We haven't actually honest answer. We have not solved to P2M yet. This is fundamentally expected to be imagined today as a P2P solution. For peer-to-peer solutions where you're not sending money to your phone number or a contact is where this is going to help. So this will, it can also trigger some convenience factors like, okay, you don't know how to trigger your QR code. You don't know where the QR code scanner is. You can say, hey, open my QR code scanner, right? And then open up that QR code scanner, that activity. You can do that today, but it's not replacing a PTM fully yet.
Okay, and if suppose I want to make an insurance payment.
That can again help. So all the bill payment things are envisioned as part of it. Like you should be able to now say, hey, pay my ICICI insurance person. It will not take you to that particular biller section and say, and then it might ask you some follow-on questions. That page will require you some follow-on questions. Potentially you can provide that by voice again or by selecting on the screen itself directly, whichever is more convenient at that point. But you don't have to figure out how to pay my ICICI. You just speak on the home screen, hey, pay my ICICI insurance release. To answer your question. So that's what is being envisioned as part of this.
How many languages have you enabled for?
So right now we're hoping to enable 5. The goal is to get 22, cover all the 22 languages. But to start with, all of that will get handled as part of this because that's the key. But the thing that is from voice technology, as with any AI technology, even for example fingerprinting, it doesn't work for all the time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't just work. Same way with voice, it will work for most cases. There will be some esoteric dialects which might just not be able to understand, right? So probably that 5% will get, fringe cases will get cut out, but for a vast majority it should be able to handle. That's a core aspect. So I can't say that at this point, but yeah. But the launch is to be able to do with a couple of languages. It won't start launch with 22, launch with a few.
How far we have reached in terms of accuracy of the ASRs in Indic language perspective?
Right. So this is, purely from an ASR accuracy perspective, it varies from a very theoretical version of ASR perspective. It's like typically around, for English, Indian English is around 90 to 95%. With Hindi, it's around 92% is there. With Tamil, Kannada, it starts to lower. It's around 85 to 87%. And with even more relatively low language, it goes to 80%. But what the whole thing that is being envisioned here is to be, because it's a voice payments thing, you don't just depend on the accuracy of the ASR. There are things that you do on top of it because you know the context of what is happening. You know when you're trying to send a person a number, you know it's a number, it's a phone number. And if you know you're sending a person to a name, that name belongs in your contact list. So there are additional tricks that you can perform on top of using the context to be able to increase the accuracy of the overall experience. While purely from an ASR perspective, it might make mistakes, but we can do a lot of things on top of it to actually move that 80% to actually 95% accuracy, which is what we do. Because a lot of things your context will give you that pure ASR engine will not get.
So the intent, we have a ASR plus NER engine?
Yeah, there's an ASR plus NER plus a whole bunch of other engineering magic that happens in the middle to be able to now do. Because it's not just two AI components which put together and just will automatically work. Right? It's a lot of things that has to happen on top of it to be able to now recognize and make the overall end-to-end experience seem like super accurate. That's all the end user cares about. He doesn't care about ASR is great, NLP is great. Overall put together is what.
And also, are you looking for, means you have your model which hits the API,
correct,
but over a period of time collecting these data and retraining your model,
correct.
do you?
Oh yes, that's all part of the platform that we are planning to build, right? So that's the thing, like where it is continuously learning. It starts with a certain level of accuracy, and as people actually start to use the system, it learns even more, right? And then there are two variants that it has to learn. One is on the variants with respect to accents, and with respect to like how people say, like 205, right? Number itself will be saying, okay, 205, 205, 205 as an example, right? These are all already well understood patterns. Now there could be a pattern which you have not even thought about. Right? Those patterns you will learn only when you see on the fly, and system will learn. Right? And eventually there's only finite number of patterns. It's not an infinitely growing pattern all the time. So that's will over time it will just like the accuracy level will just shoot up beyond a point.
I wanted to understand, I understand that we are in a probably very initial phase of this whole thing. I want to understand how you see this sort of a voice payments go ahead, how the journey will go ahead in the future. Say, will there be are you looking at saying the PIN, saying the PIN through voice itself, or say something like UPI Lite also coming in, some automatically debiting for some fixed amount, 200 or something. So are you seeing some sort of that? Because then that will really enhance this whole customer journey.
So that's, I think, good question. That exactly I'm assuming eventually we will want to be able to not get there, right? Where it is as far up, is it even possible to be able to imagine when someone says send 200 rupees to my mom, I don't ask the person any more question. Okay? I know who the person is because my first factor authentication is already done. My second factor authentication is his voice. Right? I know who is he sending it to, his mom, and my contact list has the mom's number. I know the number that he's going to send to. Every detail is available in this one single command. Right? Now can I reach the end of that goal? As long as the money is there in his bank, can I now reach the end of that goal in one shot? Right? I think that is definitely the future that is being imagined down the line. How soon that feature will be hit? Of course, there are a lot of, for good reasons, there are roadblocks that have been put to cross, but that's hopefully we'll be able to hit that goal sometime soon. But that's the vision, right? How quickly, how easily to be able to get that. And to be able to say that in your own language. In Ammakku Eranu Anupu. Right? You should be able to speak that simple.
So you have seen it? Just a follow-up on that. So is your model accommodating those pattern recognitions, or is it the app that has to do it?
No. That's the platform will take care of all of this. The app is to be able to perform the actual business logic. The voice part should not be handled by them at all. Right? That's all abstracted by the platform to be able to solve that problem.
Yeah, because otherwise...
Otherwise, the burden is just half done. Right? Yeah, that's not at all the goal. For them, it's just, okay, who are you going to send it to? How much is the amount? What did the user say? How did we get to that? Is all the platform's problem. Right? And that's the platform that, again, as we work with the NPCI, that's the platform that NPCI will be able to make it work along with us.
So if it ever becomes a end-to-end voice-activated transaction, do you see any human error risk? So for example, if I have to, let's say, 13 and 30.
Correct.
What are the mechanisms?
So today, good question. And again, to be able to know, that's where you have to be, unfortunately, we have to take baby steps. While we can rush to go to the final goal, we can't rush to the final goal. That's why there's typically a step in the middle where to make sure, did we get you correctly? You might have said 30, we might have understood as 13. Right? And then essentially completely change the whole meaning of who you're trying to send to. You might have said, my mom, it'll go to your wife's mom, trigger a whole set of legal problems. So you have to be able to now make sure all of that systems are all handled. So while there is a layer of convenience that is being done, it still expects you to be able to now solve that by manually reviewing and verifying and saying, okay, click once to confirm that. Where as the tech becomes more and more mature and then there is a high level of guarantee, where number of times people are clicking confirm without editing anything. Then you know that, okay, 95% of the time, no editing has ever happened. Right? So then you know that, okay, the system is actually performing at the level, then we can even remove that confirmation step in the middle, potentially, right? If the regulators allow us to allow that system to happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Do you see a threat from something like Alexa? Because I can do the same thing with Alexa, saying, Alexa, pay 200 rupees to Nandan. And the payment app can actually build Alexa skills to perform the transaction. So do you see that as a big challenge?
It is quite possible. And I think more and more channels to be able to get the same thing is always good. You don't have to restrict people to only do one thing. But today, as it stands right now, most of us don't. If you think about what we use Alexa for today, it is mostly for entertainment. Right? We don't use it for any real serious transactions. Right? Because of the far-field nature of Alexa, right? And because of all this problem that he was just asking, you can't trust it fully. I still need that human verification. I need to check, did I actually send 200, did it recognize 200? Did it send to my mom only and not to my wife's mom? It needs that additional check. And doing that with Alexa, which is expected to be a far-field device, completely breaks the whole thing. So you would need, today most of it happens on an app. Now on that, the Alexa does not provide anything from an app ecosystem perspective because it's meant to be their own ecosystem. Right? So we still think the most of the practical transactions will happen on this platform. Eventually, this matures, we get to the point where the system actually works very reliably. Eventually, Alexa also wants to be able to adopt it. I think it's great for more and more people.
One more question. You also build the learning. Let's say I have a payment app and I integrate it with your systems. And so whatever voice commands are performed on my app, will you also have some sort of a learning? And if yes, then will you actually know all the payments done by all my customers?
Oh, good, that's fair. So again, there are two models that the way our system, from a platform perspective, we have a domain-specific model, and then there is a customer-specific model, right? And this domain-specific model is extended to add with the customer's data, customer's thing, it becomes a customer-specific model. Typically, the runtime activity that happens, it happens only at the customer-specific model. It doesn't go down to the domain-specific model. Unless the customer allows us to say, it's fine, update the global model so that everybody else benefits from this, you update it. Right? Otherwise, it's there. Now, when we now do this, we don't know transaction. We only know from a voice platform perspective, we don't know who the person is. We don't know who's sending the money because we are not the guy who's authenticating it. So the app is already authenticated. For the voice system, you don't have to know it is you. You just need to know what are the, sending it to, you're sending a voice, you're triggering a payment, who the person destination is, how much money you're trying to send to. Right? It's only those two pieces of the puzzle you know. You don't know anything about who the originator of it. That only the app knows and the bank knows that. Right? So we don't know that. And from a privacy perspective, we don't even persist many of the data in the system. Again, they are all PII data, so we remove all of that data and when we actually store it for analytics, because we don't really need to know the actual name or number. Right? Only some part of it we need to know, so only that gets persisted to even to be able to improve the models too.
Thank you.
One question.
Yeah.
We're talking about different use cases. Have we tried to profile different type of customers? I mean, maybe differently abled people or a certain age group. Because right now we are trying to link it all to the apps and the app users.
Correct.
So that's a very, in a way, a restrictive age group that we usually deal with.
Correct.
Is this actually, have you thought of a use case which will go beyond, push that border somewhere in a different direction?
I think that's the aspiration from NPCI's perspective. Again, I can't speak for NPCI, but I think that's the aspiration to be able to make it available to more and more channels, not just limited to the smartphone ecosystem. But from a general consumer side story and everything, my assumption is like the world is aspiring towards becoming a smartphone use case, even for our parents and for the elderly and the tier 2 citizen. They may be using a non-smartphone reason because of from a accessibility and other limitation that they exist today. But everyone aspires to go to it because the value that a smartphone provides today is actually invaluable. Right? From WhatsApp to everything else, there are so many more advantages that a smartphone now provides. One of the limitations is the fact that they are not able to understand the interfaces. They are not able to know. They are not as technically advanced to be able to consume.
They may not be able to use.
Okay, you're talking about the physically.
Able people.
That is a.
Or maybe an age group beyond a senior citizen, super senior citizen.
So that's possibly. I think like how we will. I'm sure we definitely need to be able to solve for them also. How we will solve for them is a question. Like we were having a conversation with one of our things. There are some discussions that are happening with him, but. I'm not saying this is going to solve all problems, but definitely a problem that needs to get solved.
Any other question? Okay, I think that's it. And thank you very much, Kumar sir, for this highly